Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie. I am always excited about the days that we gather together so that we can talk and learn from one another. As we are continuing to talk about what it means to be a caregiver, I know many of you have found the task to be daunting, and it really is. I've been in that space myself, and each and every day I'm reminded of how strong I am, how vulnerable I can be at times, how transparent I need to be at other times. And today will be no shortage of bringing you individuals who can not only pour into your life, but will also give you directions, tips, guidance, opportunity to really explore what are you made of. Sometimes we just are unsure how we will handle some of what life unexpectancies bring to us. Today, we are going to be joined by our contributors, Dr. Tierney, Stacey Owens, and Pastor JT Johnson. But we also have two special guests in studio today, Dr. Terry Witt Bailey and Lavita Marshall. And I am so excited for each of you to get to know them, to learn more about who they are and how their stories can not only inspire, but cause you to find a way to live a balanced life. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I am so excited to learn from each and every one of you today. And, the reason that we're here is to really sit and talk and discuss and to share stories about how do each of you individually and within your family guide or get to a place of guiding through caregiving. I know that it's not easy. And so what I'd like to do today is, just be able for you to say who you are, what you do, and what caregiving has meant to you. And then I want to do a little bit more of a deeper dive simply because that's just where we are in this season between breast cancer, dementia, strokes, other illnesses, sudden onset accidents. We just don't know what life will throw at us. But I know that when we dig down deep, we can find the strength that we need and the courage, but it's not always easy. Pastor JT, I want to start with you because in your profession as a pastor, I know that you're always talking to individuals about what life looks like on the other side of caregiving. How do you help people identify what it means to be a caregiver?
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Jacquie. I honestly believe as a pastor, kind of, sort of, I'm a caregiver. Because you would be amazed how many times I've had to be in a space with a family who has had life dropped at their doorstep unexpectedly. Just a real world analogy. If you wake up in the morning and the meteorologist knocks it out the park and says that it's a 70% chance of rain, and it actually rains, and you bring an umbrella, you're prepared. But that day that you wake up and you miss getting that, and you're out and the sun is shining, and you're expecting everything to be a breeze, and then out of nowhere a cloud comes, and then a storm comes and it catches you, and you aren't prepared, it seems like that day is ruined. And oftentimes that's what happens when life comes. It comes unexpectedly. And as a pastor, I've had to deal with some people in some of their worst moments. I love the celebratory moments, but I believe it's those moments when we're down, when we're low, that we are, my profession, I believe that I'm tapped in to be who God has called me to be. Because I think it's one thing on a Sunday morning to stand and open up a text and preach a good message. But life normally happens at 11 o'clock on Sunday. Life normally happens after the benediction is given. And so to be able to be there and to encourage them and motivate them and push them, because oftentimes when you're in a position of being a caregiver and having to help someone through, and not just physical caregiving, because I know we'll get to that at some point in this conversation today. But there's a lot of people who have to deal on the other side of grief, on the other side of a divorce, on the other side of an unexpected death. So caregiving holistically, you have to have a great circle, a great village that can help the person that's giving the care. Because if not, you'll in turn be a person that's needing the care being given back to you.
That's such a right word for right now. Oftentimes the tables can turn and you end up needing caregiving yourself. Stacey Owens, what does being a caregiver mean to you, or being in a caregiver light of life?
Hmm. I was sitting here thinking while Pastor JT was talking, in terms of defining caregiver, I feel like I've been a caregiver all my life, even when I was young, in teenage years, when I used to just help my older siblings with their kids. It started there when they would have you babysitting and helping with the things that they needed going on. And then moving into, the capacity of having my own children and having my son to experience his bout with cancer and his different diagnoses that he received as he was growing up. And then moving into this position as an educator, every child that's placed before you have something that they need from you. And so as a caregiver, you're there to look out for the best interests of others and to support them in their times of need, to celebrate them when they're doing well, to help parents when they are finding out that their child has been diagnosed with something, or if they're just going through the normal life things like Pastor JT was saying, my light's going to be turned off tomorrow. How do you help support and help folks to continue to think in that growth mindset to how they can think through how I can improve my personal situation right now? And I think the biggest thing for me is just recognizing that whatever comes before you, you already have within you everything that you need to deal with that. It's just trusting yourself and looking inward and seeing what strengths you can bring to the table so that you can help whatever is in front of you that's needing the help.
Absolutely. Dr. Tierney.
So I absolutely echo what my esteemed colleagues have just stated, Pastor JT and Stacy. And as they were talking, I was thinking about, the fact that we're all caregivers. We often think caregiving or the caregiver being someone that's caring for someone that is ailing or sick or, something kind of in that arena. But actually caregiving it's a bigger thing than just caring for someone that's sick. Anytime you are helping someone or helping to meet the need of someone, then that is a caregiver. For me, I'm a caregiver in both my personal and my professional life. Being a life coach, that's really, the number one thing that I do is caregiving for my clients, being that support person, being that safe space where they can come and talk about their needs, particularly those that are helping, aging parents, ailing siblings or things like that, because like we just stated, those tables can turn. And often we will start to focus in on the person that we're helping and ignore ourselves. And we're not giving care to ourselves. And then we're the ones that are now sick or, ailing and things like that. So making sure that I'm supporting my clients, that they are getting the care that they need for themselves and getting it from me and giving it to themselves. And of course, in my personal life, I am an only child. My mother and I have already had the conversations. That's something I think in our Black community, we definitely need to make sure that we're having those conversations early and often and not being afraid of it. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that later on in the show, but we've had the conversations. We already know what our plan is. We've had the powwow. I know where all the papers are. So making sure that I'm ready when I'm, have to carry more of her load in that sense. So yeah, caregiving it's more than just caring for Amy. It's helping in any capacity.
Absolutely. Helping in incapacity, oftentimes people are not clear on what that needs to look like. And so I always say there's the help you want and there's the help you need. And then there's the help you just kind of need to push to the side. Because in life, there are going to be times where you have to be in that situation or in that space where you need to put pride aside, where you need to put your feelings and your emotions to the side, where you need to really get into a space of saying, I cannot do this by myself. But then there are other times there's the help that you want. There are people who know what you need, who've been where you are, who truly can identify with the situation, the circumstance that you're facing, and then can show you and prepare you on how to navigate the nuances of what's happening in your life. But then there's the help that you can absolutely say, no, thank you. And I think that we all have to be honest with ourselves, that there are days when we just don't want any other people in our space. There are times where we need to be alone. There are times where we need to think through what is happening with us and be able to make sense of it all ever before we invite people in. And so as we continue in this conversation and dialogue today, When we come back after the break, I'm going to invite in Dr. Terry Whitt Bailey to talk to us about her story, because each of our journeys is personal, and how we approach it, how we face it, and how we look at it can really play a part in how we thrive through it. When we're back after the break.
Put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you poop him.
Oh my God.
So what?
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you've heard from our contributors, that being a caregiver can literally start at a very young age, depending on your family dynamic or your community. And then oftentimes there's situations in life that really throw us a curveball. And we are saying to ourselves, when did I become this person? When did I, become the individual that everyone looked toward to be able to make things right? And then there are other times that things happen in our lives that are so personal that they really touch us at our core. I'm excited today to talk to Dr. Terry Whitt Bailey. She's going to tell you all about herself and the work that she does, but also share with us her personal story and journey as a caregiver. Hey, Dr. Terry.
Hey, Dr. Jacquie. Thank you so much for inviting me to tell my story. I currently work for a nonprofit. I'm the vice president for a nonprofit in Indianapolis, Indiana. And my story goes back about 7 years now. And as Pastor JT said, life happens, but life happens in God's timing. And it just so happened that on most days, I'm a very busy person, always involved in something. But that particular day, I was home. I had come home early for dinner. My husband was giving a final at the community college where he worked. And he came in the door, got his plate, came to where I was, and he was looking strange and couldn't cut his meat. And it was very odd. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he says, I think I've had a stroke. And so, of course, it scared me. And we literally got in the car and he walked into the hospital on a Thursday. And by Saturday of that same week, he lost all control of his left side. And that was in May of 2016, through lots of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We thought we were on a road to recovery. And in August of that same year, he had a second stroke in the exact same spot and wasn't able to recover in a way that would allow him to continue to work, because it did also affect his brain. And so we kind of talked about it being our new normal. We just said it was a new normal, and I was just bouncing along, coming home during breaks and then lunchtime and making sure he was okay before we actually got a caregiver in the home, because he slept in a hospital bed in our home. I was acting like nothing was different. We just took care of business, did everything that needed to happen. And I went to the doctor for my annual checkup, and I was trying to get some paperwork filled out for family medical leave, FMLA. And the doctor was going to sign the papers. And he says, yes, 5 weeks sounds really good. You need to have that time off, but it's not for your husband. This is for you. Mm-hmm. And it was my check in saying, okay, well, I didn't realize that it was really affecting me. I thought I could continue to do all of this. Fast forward to 2021, November, Thanksgiving, just last year, my husband was complaining of neck problems. And so he wanted to go to the emergency room, and we found out that he had cancer and through squamous cell carcinoma. And the doctor recommended chemo and radiation. He wasn't healthy enough to be able to have surgery. And from that chemo and radiation, he was also got pneumonia, which led to double pneumonia. My husband passed in March. We had 6.5 great years during his cancer and his strokes, but we had 30 years of marriage. And we talk about living our vows. We lived every single vow, and that was what God planned. And it's very odd because I prayed to God to give me peace and joy. And I really have that. And I'm really sometimes worried, why am I okay? And God just says to me, didn't you ask for that? That's why I gave that to you. Mm-hmm. And so living through all of that and trying to help my husband, being a person that couldn't use his entire left side, we still did things. We went on a cruise, we walked airplanes, I drove us to Atlanta, and we did those things until he couldn't do them anymore. And so God gave me the physical strength, the emotional strength, and the spiritual strength to get through it. Again, I don't know how I did it. It was God's grace and mercy. I do know that part. But to just share with your viewers that you have to have a higher being to get you through situations where caregiving becomes almost like a full-time job. There is no way I would have gotten through this without the Lord. There's no way that I would have gotten through this without my family and my church family and my friends. There's no way I would have gotten through this without my husband being by my side and going through this with me. We went through it together. And so I've been grieving for 6.5 years. So when he passed, I think I'd been through a lot of the stages of grief, and I'm moving forward. It's important. That's what he wanted. That's what God would want. And he's given me what I need to keep going forward.
Terry, you have given us some wisdom keys, and I hope that our viewers were listening to everything that you said, because you began with this full awareness and understanding of what it would take from you to be able to step into this role. I heard you say that before you invited in another caregiver, that you were taking on some of that responsibility for yourself. At what stage did you begin to recognize and identify that you needed help beyond what Terry could give?
It wasn't me that recognized that. It was everybody around me. It was everybody around me. I was, the Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman. So I was the Wonder Woman. I thought I could do it all. I could work a full-time job, come home back and forth. And then at night, make sure that I was taking care of him. Even times when he was going through his cancer and had to be fed through a feeding tube through his stomach, I was doing all of that. And there were people that would remind me, you need rest. Oh, no, I'm okay. I can do it. Everything's fine. I feel fine. I'm fine. No, I was not fine. But I didn't realize it. There were the people that were closest to me and my primary care doctor that helped me to realize that I'm not superhuman, that I'm human, and that I needed to have the help of others, especially those who are professionals and those who loved me and my family, to help to step in and to allow me to sit down. Now, one other thing that did happen was I broke my hand one Christmas about 5 years ago. And I thought, I realized, I said, this was God sitting me down because I couldn't do it. And so he sat me down and I had to have other people come in and help.
That's, God does have a sense of humor. I want to invite Dr. Tierney in on this conversation because something that you mentioned was the processes of grief that happened during the time that you were experiencing this diagnosis with your husband and the things that you went through. Dr. Tierney, in your work in helping people identify not only where they are, but the stages of grief related to getting to know you better. How does this help individuals as they are growing through their pain? Because oftentimes people don't know how to express what they are experiencing.
Absolutely. So something that I see quite often is that people try to suppress the pain. I'm not going to cry. I don't want, nope. I just got to keep going. I just got to, keep moving. And sometimes that can be a coping mechanism because we're afraid that if we start crying, we won't stop, or if we start to fall apart, then we won't come back together, again. But we have to allow ourselves to feel what we feel. We have to go through that process. And in going through that process, what we find on the other side is another level of resolve that we didn't know we had, another level of strength that we didn't know, that we had. But it's only in allowing ourselves, giving ourselves that space and that grace to say, hey, this is happening. I feel some type of way about it. One minute I feel this way, the next minute I feel that way, and allowing yourself to process that and inviting the professionals in to help you with that. Like I said earlier, this is where I see myself as a life coach, as a caregiver, sitting in the seat and in the space with you to hold your hand, to say, it's going to be okay, giving you some of those tools that you need in that moment, right then, right now, to tell you that you're going to be okay. You're going to get, through it, so that you're not feeling like you're walking through this all by yourself, or that if I start to feel and emote in this way, that it's just going to be a mess and I'm just going to be a mess, that it's okay. Life is messy. Things get messy, but in you going through that process, you will learn a deeper level of you that you didn't even know, was in there. And on the other side of it, just as Dr. Bailey just stated, the strength that she had, how God her to walk through this. If she would have just put up that wall and not went through it, she wouldn't be able to say what she's saying right now. And so that's the thing that I encourage my clients to do when they're facing, these difficult life situations, is to give themselves that patience and that grace to walk through it and know that they're not walking through it alone.
Absolutely. Dr. Bailey, what have you learned about yourself, having gone through this process and now being on the other side, literally just only a few months? Who is this new Dr. Bailey?
I'm still figuring that out. I've gone back into my routine, whatever that is, going to work and participating and volunteering at the places that I've done before, but not having that partner next to me. We were married 30 years. And so trying to figure that out hasn't quite happened yet, but I feel the joy and I feel the peace that God has given me. And so that's what I worry about sometimes, that I'm not grieving in the way that I think I should be grieving. So I don't know who that new person is. I just get up and I keep going and love the work that I do, love the people that I'm around. And so I don't have that answer yet.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing, because I think that we get to that opportunity of saying it's okay to step into the rediscovery phase. Dr. Tierney.
And I was just going to say, Dr. Bailey, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is no set process of you're doing it the right way if you hit all the stages in this order, or, it's so personal and it's so intimate, to you, because what you're walking through, no one else has walked through in the way that you're walking through it. So that's where that grace piece comes in, to say, hey, this is my process. This is how I'm grieving. I'll get there, like you said earlier, in God's time, and it will be exactly what it's supposed to be. So I love to hear that you are in this discovery mode of that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. When we come back after the break, I want to engage Pastor JT. I know he hates when I do this, but I always call him my resident theologian, because there's some things that we've just heard when it comes to grief and things being so personal in our space that oftentimes we don't know which end of the stage we're at. We don't know if we should start at 5, go to 3 and jump to 1. Sometimes we don't even know what the stages are. When we come back after the break.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, being a caregiver requires all of you to be all in at all times, whether you're upside down, right side up, or flipped all the way around. Sometimes we just get in there and do it because that's what is required of us, or should I say that's what people expect from us. I want to talk to Dr. JT for a moment because Dr. Terry mentioned something related to this grief process and where we may find ourselves in it. And to be quite honest, it's a lay-side moment because when you're in the middle of grief, you don't know whether you're coming or whether you're going. Pastor JT.
Yes, ma'am. It's, I heard so much. I love, if I can just go back to our last block, I love her answer when she said, I don't know. Because oftentimes I think that's the weight that we embrace that's not ours. We try to figure it out and we try to have the answers. And in that moment of not knowing, I feel that oftentimes we feel that we are letting someone down or maybe even letting ourselves down. But there's a scripture in James, and James said that if you ask, no matter what you ask, God is free to give. There was a very lengthy sermon that Jesus preached. There was a series of messages. There was a few theologians came up with a mathematical equation that said it was about 3 days worth of sermon. Now, many of us don't have the attention span to stay focused for 3 hours, let alone 3 days. But in the midst of that sermon, Jesus gave some beatitudes, the attitudes that we should have when we are attempting to be. And one thing that he said is blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And I think that in some weird way, we want the comfort without the mourning. But the mourning is actually just releasing the emotion that we are experiencing at that time. It's almost kind of like a soda that's in a bottle that has been shaken, and life comes to shake us. But oftentimes when we are open or we open up, we explode just like that soda bottle. And it's only because we haven't had those moments to pour out here and there, and we try to hold it in. And if I can just share that with anybody, there's a scripture in the Old Testament. Again, I'm not trying to preach, but Dr. Jacquie invited me to this space. But it said that God is close to the brokenhearted. But typically when our hearts are broken, we go opposite of him. But if the scripture says that he's close to the brokenhearted, the only person that has moved out of place is us. And so there may not necessarily be the circle around you that you may want to help you, because there are a lot of people, and there may be a lot of people now that are having the weight of taking care of a parent by themselves. And maybe you have other siblings and you feel that other people should be helping you, and you are in this space by yourself. You may not have the support system around you, the girlfriends or, the brothers that are there to help you through what you're going through, but you are not alone. But he cannot be in a place that you have not invited him to be. So we're expecting him to move beyond our request and just know that you got to come and be there. But I promise you, you make it that much more easier for him to deliver to you what you need at that moment. And if I can stress that, at that moment, because I think one of the most dangerous things is combining grief with anxiety. And anxiety comes when we are too far in the future. When we are in that moment, I believe that he gives us everything we need to get through that moment. Hence why he said he gives us our daily bread. Not enough for a week, but enough for that moment. And if we can take life moment by moment, and whatever that moment is, he has what you need to get through that moment. So if that moment is a moment where you are angry, Even the Bible said, be angry, but sin not. Have that moment. If that's a moment where you're crying your eyeballs out, have that moment. Because whatever the moment is, you have a God that has all you need to get you through that moment and beyond.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to tell you, you have no idea that this is a perfect segue for us to talk to our next special guest, Levita Marshall. I am over the moon about her joining us today because to me, I tell her all the time, she's a unicorn. And so I'm going to invite Levita Marshall in to talk to us about her journey and her story. So many of you are often wondering, how do you manage? How do you support your husband? How do you engage when loved ones become ill that are not your blood? And I'm going to tell you, this lady right here is the embodiment of everything that I believe a woman is to be when it comes to caregiving. Everybody, Levita Marshall.
Hello.
Hello there, lady. How are you doing today?
Hey, great. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Your story, your life inspires me. And at any point, I hope I have half the courage and the strength that you have to do all that you have done. So tell our audience about yourself and then just jump right into your story because it is an amazing one.
Okay. Well, I am a lifelong educator. And actually, as of right now, it's funny because I told my children and laugh. I said, I'm taking a gap year right now. So after this pandemic and all of that, I just needed a little break. And so this is my gap year where I try to reassess what I'm going to do with the rest of my life career-wise. But my journey started about 2009. My husband and our 4 children were living in a city about 2 hours outside of Houston. And his father had started to exhibit some very unusual signs. And then eventually he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. And his wife was, my mother-in-law, was doing a great job of being that helpful support maid. And she was doing a great job. But eventually we saw that it came to the point where we knew we would have to relocate back to the Houston area. And so about 3 or 4 years into that diagnosis, we decided that that's what we needed to do. So our children were 2 in middle school, 2 in high school at the time. Yes, it was the most inopportune time, but we knew as a family, this is what we were going to need to do. We invited our children in. I believe that's really, really very important to invite them into the discussions. And we told them that we're going to need to go help your grandparents. We really need to be there to support them. And so they were in on the entire move. They knew why we were moving. It wasn't a shock to them. They would go to Houston with us to help, their grandparents. And so they were really always in on it. And another thing was that once we got relocated to the Houston area, no sooner had we settled in, I think we were trying to my husband was handling a lot of the legal issues. They had their own business for 30 years. So that was just a whole nother thing to tackle. So he was handling a lot of their business affairs, their legal affairs. He was helping his mom with that. And we must have been in the Houston area for about 18 months. It was not even longer than that when she started to exhibit some very unusual signs as well. We ended up taking her to the doctor, and she was diagnosed with dementia. So needless to say, I can't even explain to you how, I wouldn't say we were paralyzed with fear, but we were kind of numb for a while. And I remember just looking at my husband and asking, what in the world are we even going to do with this? How will they take care of themselves? All of us are working. We all have careers. How does this look? I know I must have asked a million questions to him, but we finally just decided that I would finish the school year out, and I decided to resign. I told him that I would be the one I would want to help his mom, and I was not doing this all by myself, but I did want to be the one to be there to help her in those initial stages. One of the things that we eventually decided to do, it is very important they bring caregivers into your home. Very, very, very important. So his mom and dad were still at their home. There was a family member living in the home, so they were not by themselves, but we did get caregivers to come in, one for him and one for her, for the amount of time that could come during the week. And so I helped to coordinate all of that, and I would take mom to the grocery store, and I would just take her on errands just to kind of get her out of the house in the initial stages. But then it came a time where I realized, okay, we have got to get way more professional support. That illness is an absolute beast. It is very brutal, what it does to people. And we knew that, okay, we're not just dealing with parents who are aging in place. We're dealing with parents with a very brutal degenerative disease. And so I decided to look up the Alzheimer's Association in Houston. And ironically, I say ironically, but I knew it was really God ordained. It was about 5 minutes away from their house. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to go to the Alzheimer's Association, and I just walked in the door and I said, we need help. I need help. What can you do for us? And so that started just a whole nother journey with that particular organization that I'm so very blessed I walked through those doors, because they helped me walk out the rest of the years and the rest of the time. And it was an amazing, amazing time with the Alzheimer's Association. And they ended up inviting me to their annual conference to be their closing speaker, to speak on the perspective of a caregiver.
Those are some very exciting tips that you have shared with us, Lavita, because oftentimes people don't know how to engage in the conversation. Right. And your kids were small at that time. And I want to invite Stacey into this conversation because Stacey works at a school. You're both educators. And oftentimes having these conversations with young children, especially when it's we can't go to the playground, we're not going to be able to stay out that long. I mean, there are just so many dynamics where children are involved. Stacey, in hearing what Lavita has said to us, and in your work with children, how do we usher in these layers of conversations that can literally not only impact them academically, but also impact them in the home and how they engage with others around them?
Man, I think it's so important that you involve the children in the conversation initially so that they can understand what's happening around them, and then take it to that next level of helping them to understand the part that they will play in it, not necessarily from the aspect of that they will be preparing any, being a caregiver, but helping them to understand their role, like taking responsibility and accountability for just the things that they're responsible for, like going to school, like letting them understand that the only thing that you're expecting for them to do in this process is to do their part in terms of keeping their grades up, participating in the things that's happening at home, at school, and just understanding the changes that's happening around them. I think it's key too that we make sure we monitor and don't allow them to get lost in this space. I know when I was being the caregiver for my son, it was important that although my daughter understood what was going on, it was still important that I sort of carved out that time and space for her so that she can still do the things that she enjoyed doing and she didn't become isolated because of what was happening in the home. And I think it's awesome that when you use the support groups, finding support groups even for the children so that they can understand what is happening and how they can partake in themselves. But I think just making sure that the child understand that the only expectation that you expect from them at this time is for them to continue to grow healthy, be a child, do the things that they're supposed to do while understanding the changes that's going around them. I think that's key.
Let me ask you both this question, because oftentimes we go through this, what happens in my house stays in my house. And kids oftentimes, as you said, do get lost in the shuffle because they haven't told the school. The nurse doesn't know what's going on. And so when a child is exhibiting some of the anxiety that's happening from the home at school, Lavita first, when is a good time to talk to the school about what the family is experiencing?
I did do that because being an educator, I knew how important that conversation was. And we were having children who were going into middle school and starting high school. So they were already going to be in those transitions, even if we had never relocated. And so I knew how important that was going to be. And so I did. I built a really great relationship with their school counselors, and I did explain the situation. And even when we spoke to our children, we had gone on family mission trips, actually. And so we literally told our children, we have a new mission, and we're not going to be serving other communities like we've done in the past, but we're going to be serving your grandparents. That's our new mission field. And so that's the way we presented to them. But we did invite the schools in. And I had ongoing conversations with their counselors, and I actually encouraged the children to go and speak to their counselors, which were very, very helpful. And they did. They really did take me up on that offer.
Absolutely. Stacy.
So, Lavita, I think that was great that you did that, and that's really key. But there's a lot of families that won't do that. They're going to stick with that. What happens in the home stays in the home. So that relationship piece that you were just talking about, the school also has a responsibility. I tell my teachers all the time, we have to build relationships with our students, and we also have to build relationships with our parents. But the relationships that we build with our students need to go beyond just the relationship that you have with them academically in the classroom. You need to know your students beyond the classroom, because if you know them beyond the classroom, then when those kind of changes take place, you will recognize the change in behaviors. And once you start recognizing the change in behaviors, whether they're tired, withdrawn, feeling anxiety, showing grades dropping, whatever, now we have a due diligence as educators to try to figure that out and not just assume that it's just a child doing a child thing. We need to, in those relationship building pieces, see what's happening. So if they don't bring the information to us, we can go and create that safe space of finding out what else is going on with the child that can be providing the changes. Not for it to be in a punitive space, but just in the space of, now that I know this, how can I support it as an educator? So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about that very thing. How do we all move forward? When we're back after the break.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, caregiving is everybody's responsibility, from the youngest person to the oldest person. There's all a role that we can play. I want to bring everybody back in, because as we're talking about this space, one of the things that we do need to touch on is, how do you move forward? Moving forward isn't always easy, but it's one of the things that has to get done. When you all think about everything that we've talked about on this show today, from the youngest to the oldest, from whatever stage you jump in and help, moving forward is the name of the game. And oftentimes it's not easy, and people get into this space of what we call being stuck. So I'd like to ask each of you, how did you, if you happen to have gotten stuck, get unstuck? Because I don't think that people fully are aware that it's a real thing, and we all fall into it from time to time. I'm going to start with Terry.
Well, I have to say that it's really important to just take a step. Just getting unstuck just means, to me, getting out of bed, making bed, taking that one step. Because there's some days when I can do everything that's on my calendar and don't feel anything, I'm good. Then there are other days where I feel like I can't get out of bed. And I have to talk to myself, talk to the Lord. And then I say, get up. I literally say it out loud. get up. And sitting up, standing up, taking those steps, going through the routine until I feel like I can move forward, are things that sometimes happen. But I have to take a step every day. I have to do something, even if it's one thing. Do that one thing and know that you have moved forward by doing that one thing.
Absolutely. Dr. Tierney.
So I would say go at your own pace and your own process. Sometimes we get stuck because we're thinking that there's a certain way that we should be doing it, or we're looking at someone else's process and trying to do it their way, but each of us are walking this thing called life out in our own pace, in our own time, in God's timing, and what he's telling us to do. So make sure that you're going at your own pace, at your own time. Like Dr. Bailey just said, for her, it's just taking a step. For someone else, it might be just to rest, so make sure that you are looking and running your own race.
Pastor JT.
Okay, so I see it two ways, and I got two things that helps me. The first thing, I believe that my life is not my own. I am God's servant, and I see myself as his representative here. So in those moments where I feel that I'm getting stuck, that's the moment that I talk to him even more. So I keep my communication with him. And then I do what I think a lot of us fail to do is, I take jump shots, not basketball shots, but I do what the Bible said and cast my cares on him. Because the moment that I'm getting stuck, I'm caring about something too much that may not have anything to do with my future. So I put that on him, and it gives me a little movement to keep going.
Absolutely. Stacy.
Well, I'm going to just add to or extend what my colleague said by saying, stay in love with yourself. Remember what you enjoy as well, because I think often when we start getting stuck, it can be because we're overwhelmed and just overburdened with the things that we're working with. And the first thing that we'll walk away and put down is the things that we want to do for ourselves. And so to get unstuck, I know for me, I had to think about, what, Stacey, you enjoy painting. You enjoy reading books. Can you take a break from this and do the one thing that you enjoy doing so that it can recharge you and give you the energy so that you can take that next step?
Absolutely. Lavita.
Well, the word that comes to me is grace. We had a decade-long journey with my amazing mother and father-in-law, but the word that comes is grace, because we had to learn to extend grace to so many people, and then also to extend it to ourselves. There was a lot of self-condemnation. There was a lot of, negative self-talk, and did we do the right thing? Oh my goodness, did we mess this up? And we really had to learn how to extend so much grace to ourselves that we were on the right path, that we were doing the right thing, and that helped us move forward.
I can truly identify with each of your sentiments. My sisters and I went to the same thing when we were taking care of our mother. And I'll have to say that I would say the word for me would be patience, because I know my sisters, at least I thought I knew my sisters. And then when we started working together on something so important to all of us, we literally had to learn each other over and over and over again, because our thought patterns were different. How we thought my mom should be cared for were different. But when we got into that space of saying, she leads from this place of strength, and this sister leads from this place of strength, and then I lead from this place of strength, it showed us that we were able to shore each other up on the sides where we were weak. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflections.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And wow. I will tell you that this has been an emotionally charged opportunity because it literally just took me back to the time that my sisters and I were caregivers for our mom. But as I already stated, being in that space and learning so much about myself and learning more about my mom, it gave us an opportunity to literally grow. It is true that you do not know how strong you are until you're put into a situation where you have to show strength. So I will say, as we are moving forward and as you're going through or moving past or in the post part of whatever it is that you have faced, give yourself grace, love on yourself, seek God, or as we always say, not everybody who watches this show is Christian, but you believe in something. You have to dig deep and tap in to that source that gives you strength. I hope that something we have said today will allow you to continue on in your caregiver journey. Thanks for watching. Bye now.